Ladies and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between, welcome back to Thirsty Work. Tonight I'm being joined by the glorious AmiSometimes, where we're going to talk about some different aspects of, her upbringing. It's Thirsty Work. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between. It's been a little while since our last episode of Thirsty Work. I had to take a few weeks off, where I was busy doing events. Alongside all of these wonderful podcasts and content creation, I also run erotic cabarets and nightclub events and a variety of other things. And we had a couple of them that took a little more effort than I was expecting them to take. So thank you very much for your patience, everybody, in waiting for this continuation of the Thirsty Work podcast. But now we are back. And we're here joined by the glorious AmiSometimes. So, without any further ado, allow me to bring in my wonderful guest, the glorious AmiSometimes. Hello, you.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very, very well. Very, very well indeed. I think we might have a little bit of lag kicking things off, but I think we should be all right. I think we should be okay. Should be okay. So, yeah, Amy, how you doing? Well, I know this was the rearranged version because you were definitely meant to come and join us like a week or two ago. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like last week or the week before we had a little rain check. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I was able to make it on. Thank you so much for having me.
So am I. I was keen to have you on because I know that you are. Oh, excuse me. I know that you're a very open individual with a lot of things, especially over on your stream, and you are easily
Too
one of
open.
the too open. Oh, I don't know about that. You are easily the fastest reader in the world. Like the way that you can handle chat, talking, and you interacting with them is quite the force to be reckoned with. It has to be said. It has to be said. But I've brought you on here to talk about sexual engagement and coital intercourse and what have you. What was your upbringing like in regards to learning about sex and stuff like that? Tell me about that.
I think when I had my first period, my mom handed me a book that was about 600 pages long.
Okay.
That was maybe written in the 80s, and it was all about how the reproductive system worked in a human body.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it was just like here's a big old book. Deal with it. Deal with it yourself. Was that it? Was that the whole thing?
Yeah, and I I remember the book. She was like, "This is your period. If you need pads, these are pads, and this is why you're having it. And here's this book." And I remember opening the book and it landing right open to a picture of like a man on top of a woman in missionary, and then like their body parts were transparent, so you could see this is how the penis is inside the vagina. And I was like, "Holy Jesus!"
How old were you at this time? Come on,
I was 13 or 12 years old, I think. And at that point, I was very much like boys' cooties, the usual normal stuff.
the usual normal stuff. Oh my lordy,
Usual normal stuff.
just ew, boys, cuties, nasty, ew. To recap, you your sex experience was about 12, 13, getting your first period, and your mother just being like, okay, this is a natural process. Here are pads. Read this book. Here's
I
a
remember
cross
when it
section.
first happening, I was like, we had done sex ed in school throughout like the beginning of the end of we started sex ed in like fourth or fifth grade. I was in this weird class in fourth grade, where it was a combination of fifth graders and fourth graders together to
Mhm.
see if they could accelerate fourth graders by putting them with theoretically the smarter fifth graders. And so
Okay.
I got all of my education a year earlier than like normal school districts in that area at the time had. And so I was getting sex ed when I was in fourth grade, which is like 11 or 12, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, like 11 years old. And so I was learning about periods and menstruation. So when it happened, I wasn't like, "Am I dying?" I was like, "Okay, all right, all hands on deck. I know what this is. I learned about this 2 years ago.
That's
Mom, I
good.
have my period." And she was like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And I was like, "I need a pad." And she was like, where are the pads? And I was like, I have this kit that they gave me in school a year ago. And she was like, fantastic.
What,
So I was like ready to go.
okay, immediate question. You went to your mother, who I'm taking a wild assumption here, and it's very rude of me to take a wild assumption, that I'm assuming is a cisgendered woman.
Yes, my mother is
Yes.
a cisgendered woman. She's Asian. She grew up in China
Hmm.
during the communist era. So imagine that.
Okay, and she, like, I love the way that you were like, "Mother, I'm having my period," and she was like, "What do I do?" like it was
It's
that
always
way
been the
around.
case in my life. I'm like, I know what to do. Here's my pamphlet and here's this. And then, like a couple days later, she came back with this monstrosity of like this is the reproductive system book. And I was like, I don't want this.
I don't want to have to deal with this right now. So what was the, like, you say it was
Oh
600
my God.
pages, and
Frozen.
you had like a cross section of um the intercourse. But what was on the other
It was
600? Was it a
literally
good book, or was it just like, oh my god, this is the worst?
so I didn't read the whole book because I started to read it and it was literally just like showing you how to reproduce and what the process of reproducing is and explaining all about your like glands in there and like bodily lubrication and then like this is what happens when you're menstruating and like creating the uterus lining and I was like no, I don't want this.
I mean, I'm not surprised. Did you ever read any of the book, or was that just the be all and end all? You were just like, nah, I'm good.
I, like, opened it to that one page, and then I, like, flipped through to see if there was anything I really actually needed to glean from this book, but then I registered that it was, like, a very old book, and I don't even know where my mom got it from. I have no idea how she got this book because she isn't, like, she was born in China, so her English isn't the best, and she somehow purchased this, like, ancient reproductive system book and was like, "This is what my daughter needs to know for her period." And I was like, "No, none of this is useful to me. I don't need to know how it happens. I need to know what to do when it happens."
So what was your education like? So you say you had sex education a little earlier than this. What was that like? Was it just like the basic biology, or what was that like?
So, I don't know if they still do this, but at the time in my district, the middle schools, would take the 6th graders and or the 5th graders, and they would split them between the boys and the girls, right? And it was very, like, cut and dry. The boys got this information and the girls got this information. And, like, a female teacher would go off to go with the girls, and a male teacher would go off to go with the guys, and it was very much like I don't know what they said in the guy one because obviously they didn't let me. You're literally not allowed to go into that one or know what happens there. I even asked, I was like, why can't I learn what happens to them? And they're like, you don't need to know what happens to them. And I was like, I mean, yeah, but like, what if it
Oh,
is
that annoys
helpful?
me.
Like, what if I do
Yeah,
need to know? What if I actually do need to know? What if that actually? How do you know I don't need to know that? And they're like,
I
why
find
would you
that,
need to know that?
yeah, I find that entire attitude so frustrating because, like, realistically speaking, as somebody with a vulva and like a womb and having the periods all the time, how much better would it have been if the people with penises would know about that stuff in your life?
If they knew, can you imagine how that would lift, like, so much stigma and so much, like, shame surrounding
Hmm.
a thing that happens to literally everyone, you know? Like,
It's wild.
even the shame on their end, on, like, their, accidental, hard-ons and stuff like that, and the shame in
Yeah,
that situation and, like,
especially.
having that experience, it would all be lifted. Like, we would all understand each other's sides, and maybe it would be a little less embarrassing and a little less like, "Oh god, what's going on?"
Especially in like the teenage years. The teenage years, good lord, there is no controlling over those things. Your teacher's like, come up to the front of the class, and you're like, I don't want to go up to the front of the class right
I
now.
cannot, I
I'm
must
good.
go.
I have a jousting thing in my pocket, and it's not pleasant. You know, it's like, yeah, it was just
I've left my
so.
banana in my
Yeah.
pocket
Oh
and it's
God.
stuck and
Look,
I can't breathe.
I can't right now. That's fine. But it's weird as well because then it becomes like guys and or people with penises, especially. That whole dynamic. I remember my mum first asking me. She was really ill. Like she had some kind of flu or something like that, and just being like, "Hey Val, can you go around the corner and pick me up some pads because I've started my time of the month?" And I was just like, What? You want me to do what? I have to go around and buy feminine hygiene products? Oh my God. And now I look back at it now and I'm like, what? Like, it's not an issue. Jeez, I literally have some in my house, despite the fact that it's two cisgendered men that live in this house. I always have some around in case somebody with a vulva needs one, just in case.
Never know.
Exactly. But that was...
And I have like one of my managers at work, literally, you can use this excuse to get out of anything because he immediately is like a hands off, don't say anymore. I'm good, grossed out by it. Literally, if I just go up to him and I'm like, I'm having a period issue, he'll be like, take the whole day off. Go into the world. I don't care what you do. Just handle it. Don't tell me anymore. I don't need to know. And he like
I'm
immediately
out.
runs away.
Whatever it is, I'm good. I don't need to know anything more than this.
Yeah, and I'm like, you have a daughter and a wife. Like, what do you mean? Why are you so squicked by this?
Exactly. You will have to deal with this at some stage because there are people in your life that, regardless of who you are in the entire world, there are people in your life that will have vulvas and will have periods. Like, it seems so unbelievably weird to me. But I remember what it was like. I remember what that was like. So then with that kind of haphazard approach to, and I call it haphazard from my experience as a sex educator, approach to sex education, what was it like when you got into the years, I'm not going to say teenage years, but the years that you were particularly interested in getting all touchy with people of your interest?
I remember the first time I discovered self-pleasure. I don't know what we can say on Twitch, but like when you
It's all
first discover
educational.
self-pleasure
It's all
as
educational,
like a
so it's
teenager. Yeah.
masturbation's
So
fine.
we're above board. So the first time you masturbate when you're like a teenager, when you're first discovering it, you're like,
Mhm.
oh my God, what is this? This feels great. I bet you this is bad. I don't know if it's the same experience for everyone, but as somebody who came from like a conservative Asian culture, I remember the first time it happened, I was like, this feels too good. I can't have this.
Oh,
If I do this,
wow.
something bad will happen to me.
And
And any like random thing that bad, like for example, if I like bought an ice cream and dropped it, oh, it's because I masturbated a week ago.
what? That was...
And I started because it was like a shameful thing because like my parents hid the fact that they had sex, my mom hid the fact, like after she got divorced and stuff like that. Like it was a secret. Sex was a secret. All of that was a secret. I didn't even know that masturbation was a thing everybody did because nobody's talked about it. You don't learn about it in school. You don't, your friends don't tell you about it unless you have good open friends. But I was in this very like I grew up in a very rich white school district because
Mhm.
my mom worked at a restaurant there and her boss had like housing for us. So we were able to be in a very rich school district despite being very, very poor. And so I was surrounded by very conservative people. And so none of my friends talked about anything like this. And so I started thinking, oh, this is like a shameful secret. Nobody talks about this. Maybe I'm the only one that does this. I have nobody else to compare notes to or talk to about this. And my mom doesn't know anything. And I was like, no, nothing.
No, just putting the feelers out there. This is
Yeah, like,
something.
no, nothing. You don't like,
I like a cheeky little
gotcha.
fun time here and there. No.
Secret.
Oh, wow. But you see, this is the thing. This is the thing that I find so interesting. I was speaking to somebody, literally on the last episode of the Thirsty Work podcast, where we talked about like, specifically like religious upbringing and the idea of guilt and that dynamic of nobody talks about it. It feels good, therefore it must be guilty. You must feel guilt about this. This
That's
is
like the
only...
direct train of thought immediately.
Why would you feel anything else other than guilt? Like,
It
preposterous.
feels good, so it must be bad for you because
Mm-hmm.
chips and fries taste good. So and they're bad for you, and candy tastes good, and cakes taste good, but those are bad for you. And this feels good, so it must be bad as well.
And
like
that's the
everything good
dynamic.
must be bad.
Everything good must be bad. There's no other way around it. It must be bad. And then obviously, like you get onto okay. Well, if you don't mind me asking, when was the first time you had sex?
Oh my gosh, I'm a pretty late bloomer. The first time I had sex was when I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
but I 21, but like I had engaged in like oral sex prior to that, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on at the time because I was like, is this okay? I mean, it's not going in me, in me
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
so it's probably fine. And then I was like, and then so in my brain when I was younger, I was like, that didn't count.
Yeah, that I mean that's a really interesting dynamic because that's something that a lot of people, especially in the sex education world now, are trying to combat because it's like, okay, what is sex? Well, sex is a
Yeah,
penis in a vagina. Well, what about people
but
that have got two
that's
penises? What about people that have got two vulvas? Like,
no penis.
yeah, exactly. It's one of those situations where the definition of sex is so outdated. And I did a
Yeah.
full seminar on it where it basically comes down to, like I said, just what is an intimate experience between two people that have that kind of erotic charge to it and what have you. It can be
Mhm.
anything. And there's a lot of times, there's a fantastic creator called Hannah Witten who talks about how she considered, like, when she's been with people with penises, it's always been penetrative sex is sex, and anything other than that is not. It's oral sex or whatever, but it's not as at the same level. But when she's had experiences with people with vulvas, it's been on a different level, and it's like, oh, that is sex, despite the fact that it's
But
the
it's
same
absolutely still
thing.
sex.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you take out the heteronormative dynamic that, like, what can be considered to be sex. It's if the
This is so
intimacy's there.
interesting because when I was a teenager, I didn't think the oral sex really counted. I was like, it's just pre-sex,
Hmm.
like the prequel to sex, right? And then I went to college and I made some special friends in San Francisco that opened my whole world up to like a whole different new world. And suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, this is I didn't know any of this. And that's when I was like, actually, that also is sex. That's very intimate. You can catch
Hmm.
STDs from it. You can do, things can happen there and things do happen there. And then when I got older, when I had like full penetrative sex, I was like, okay, this is sex. But then I was like, but it isn't because that also counted as sex. This is just like another version of that. What difference does that make? And then when I started having sex with not cis males, I was like, wait a second, but this is also sex, right?
Right,
Do I
yeah.
separate it? Do I catalog it? Like, this is the first time I had sex with like this gender and this gender. Like, that can't all count as a separate thing. It's all sex at the end of the day.
Oh, completely and utterly. And it's actually one of the big problems that we've got with, like, toxic masculinity at the moment is the fact that you've got, like, all these men who obviously are particularly misogynistic, usually in their dynamics, and they're fine with women being with other women because it's not penetrative sex, so it's not really
Doesn't
sex.
count.
It doesn't count.
Yeah.
There's not a penis involved, so it doesn't count. So it's perfectly fine for them to go off and be with other women because it just doesn't count. It's cool. They find it kind of hot or whatever, and it's just like,
That was
you.
definitely a dynamic I had in my cis relationships where they would be like, "Oh, it's okay if you make out with a girl, if you go have sex with a girl, if you wanna, do whatever you want with a girl." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "But what if I have an emotional attachment to the girl? Like, why do you think that that's not a threat? Why do you think
Yeah.
that that doesn't change the dynamic of our relationship, that doesn't add an extra person to it and change the entirety of the relationship?"
Oh, and it completely does, and it is that undervaluing of a person's emotional dynamic of being like, oh well, you obviously couldn't fall for them because they're the same gender as you. Yeah, pretty sure you can. Look at the world as a whole.
Even more so, you'd
Hmm.
imagine, like, having somebody in the similar gender, there's so much to relate to there as well. So, if anything, that's even, I feel, more of a threat
Yeah. Oh,
if if you were to see it in, like, that manner,
but
right?
of course, there's no penis, so it couldn't possibly be. No, of course not. Of course
Not a
not.
threat, there's
Heaven
no
forbid.
penis.
That's amazing. So you're saying, like, you
I
grew up.
think a lot of women to women relationships would disagree that there's
I completely concur. I completely concur. A lot of, yeah. like lesbian relationships or woman to woman relationships who are very much concurrent on the fact that they're all right without a penis in their life, and their like relationships are completely valid regardless of that fact, and it's just
Imagine.
just as just as
Just as fulfilling.
just as fulfilling,
Shocking.
probably more fulfilling in a lot of scenarios, if I'm honest with you. If I'm honest with you, because like you say, it's that whole thing of when you have the same equipment, as it were, when you have the same sort of genitalia, you've got a much. You might not know exactly, because obviously all genitalia is different and what have you, but you probably have a better idea of what you're doing with it and what is gonna
Yeah.
likely feel nice. One of those scenarios. One of those wonderful scenarios. So you saying you've grown up in like a white area as somebody with like Chinese heritage and so I don't know your
Mhm.
full heritage yourself. Was your father Chinese as well?
My mother's Chinese and
Hmm.
my father is he's he's a Southern Asian, and the original peoples did derive from China, but
Hmm.
they're an expatriate sector of China, and they become, like, enmeshed with Southern Asian culture, so it's very, like, Laotian, Cambodian,
Okay.
Thai mix
Yeah, yeah.
down there. It's like a whole separate I don't know in English, I've lost the name, but it's Taozuoyuan, and they're essentially, like, a group of people that originally came from China, which most Asian people came from China, right? That started there.
Hmm.
And then they all and then they emigrated. So he's kind of like Laotian, Southern East Asian. So I mostly identify with Chinese because that's a culture that I predominantly grew up with.
Yeah.
But I do have a bit of like Thai and Laotian culture and stuff like that in me as well.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. And was that problematic growing up in like a white area by any chance?
So my mother and father divorced when I was quite young, when I was 7. But my father is very misogynistic, and I don't speak to him anymore, but he's very misogynistic, and he was very, very like old school Asian culture. Women are just baby makers, they handle the household, etc. And then also he was one of those Chinese fathers that was very much like, "Okay, what gender is the baby? Oh, it's a girl? Damn." You know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I've heard of the stereotypes, obviously, of like the thirst, thirst is probably a bad word. The eagerness for a male heir. Male children are the only way to go, and if it's a girl, oh well, I suppose we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it till a boy comes
Unfortunate.
along. But yeah, and so like growing up in that kind of like white area with a lot of white friends and what have you, was there any disconnect in that, like culturally?
Ooh, there was a lot of, like what's the direction? Is it white dysphoria or Asian dysphoria? Where I spent a lot of time looking at myself in the mirror and thinking to myself, "Why don't I have blue eyes? Why don't I have white skin and
Oh
blonde
right,
hair?
okay.
Why am I not Caucasian? I look so different from everybody else, and I eat such different food." And there's a lot of like shame from that, and I always felt uglier than everybody else.
Oh,
My best friend back then was this beautiful girl who looked like what's her name? The Lizzie McGuire actress. She
okay,
looked
yeah, yeah.
just like her. And so she was like perfectly blonde and blue-eyed with the pale skin and everything. And we were literally like sun and moon next to each other as best friends. Like we would do everything together, all the classes together. We would like hang out all the time together, go everywhere. And it was always like Katie and Amy. And I remember being so envious of her and just always being like, everybody thinks she's the pretty one and I'm the ugly best friend. And I always grew up with that kind of vibe that like I was the ugly Chinese girl and she was the pretty blonde best friend, right?
Hmm.
And she was the main character and I was like the supporting actress because of media, the area I was in, and like very few Chinese people at my school, like one or two that I also was friends with because else.
And did you? I love that. There was no other Chinese people, and
There's
therefore we
no
were
S.
friends.
You all become friends and everybody lumps you together because you're all we weren't even in the same grade.
You,
So
wow, wow, I love that. Oh yeah, it's like when people in like when I went over to America, and they were like, "Oh, you're British. You know Dave from London," and it's just like, "Oh, what?" you realize that even though Britain is very small in comparison to America, we don't all know each other. Like that's just the way it is. And yeah, wow, I can imagine that's especially when, because I mean, really speaking, in media as a whole, we are already plastered with what beauty should be. And I know that the vast majority of people I know of, including myself at certain points in my life, have always compared ourselves to that beauty, to that dynamic and what have you. But without, because beauty as we see it is very Caucasian. It's very white as the media sees it. And you were saying that literally, especially growing up in that kind of dynamic, that literally had an effect on your self-esteem and what have you. Did you find that?
Oh, constantly. I remember just growing up and always like learning about Western history because in schools they just teach you about American history, right?
Hmm.
And the Western history that leads to the American history that we have today. And so you don't get to learn about like everything else. You don't get to learn about the other parts of literally the entire world. You just like learn even when you learn about like Egypt and Mesopotamia, it's to get you to that segue of like Western culture and Western world and how all of that developed into the current day and age.
Hmm.
And so I always was like, oh, Chinese culture must be so boring. There's no history. I don't know anything about it. Everything is just like what I see in the movies and the media. And I watched a lot of like Chinese dramas, but I never took it as like historical accuracy, obviously.
Yeah.
But as I grew up and, came into my own and started realizing that like I don't know anything about my culture because my mother was always working every day as a single mom. And so she was working and didn't have time to teach me about my culture besides like the holiday traditions that we just
Okay.
always
Yeah.
celebrate. Like I always knew those because she would teach me that because those are the days that she would be with me, right? And so as I grew older and started like doing my own research and learning about the culture and learning about how vastly rich and dramatic and absolutely batshit crazy that's the culture is and all the things that happen in Chinese history throughout the years with the kingdoms, with like the feudal ages, with all the wars and etc. Like all the craziness. I was like, oh my God, this is like movie worthy. No wonder. No one all the movies that I've been watching, all these TV shows are all based in that rich culture and history that I took for granted because I was like, this is just a fantasy movie about fantasy people wearing
Yeah.
fantasy clothes.
And
But
then you
these are all
realize
actually my cultural clothes.
they might well have been westernized, but there's base back in the truth of your heritage, which is really
Yeah.
cool to see. It's really cool that you had that discovery. And did that have like an effect on you? Like we were talking about, obviously, sex and the way that you saw yourself and that aspect. Did that make a change with you?
It was a big change because I became really obsessed with being Asian, being the Asian girl in the group. And so I took it upon myself to like educate people about Chinese culture, Chinese food, showing all of that off to people and being like, look at this. And I became really obsessed. I on one hand, so when I was younger, I was really obsessed with Western culture and I was like a huge Francophile. And I loved like all these things about France and the food and the culture and the language. And then when I got into college and started doing my own research and learning about my culture and being on my own and realizing that like I didn't have an identity that made sense because it was so steeped in like where I lived and the friends that I had at that time in the small like bubble that I lived in. And so as I grew older and started to learn about things in college, I became the girl. I took everybody to all the Chinese restaurants. I taught them about Chinese culture. I taught them about like traditions during holidays. I started getting like really uber focused on being Chinese and like proving to people that, yeah, I am Chinese. I'm Chinese American. Here are the ways that I'm Chinese. So
That's so
without a
cool.
doubt, I am definitely Chinese because, this doesn't show you anything. It
Apparently.
isn't enough just to like exist.
No, heaven forfend. And it's just like, oh, what do you mean? Oh, good lord, you
Just
Chinese?
to verify and make sure that you understand that I am Chinese. Here's some
Hmm.
dumplings.
I love that. And people on the podcast again were literally like going back to the cover and just being like, "Are we just check, just 100% check that she is
Are you
Chinese? Yeah,
sure?
are we
We're
100% sure? I can
verifying.
verify right now that Amy sometimes is definitely Chinese." I love that. And like I suppose this kind of leads into kind of a dark area that I have to really broach because it's only something that I've really come across relatively recently in the past like 5 6 years really, which is the fetishization of people and races and cultures and stuff because you came from obviously you had was integrated into this white culture and then rediscovered your own culture and was like, oh my god, this is absolutely amazing. But I'm all too aware that that isn't always the case, and there is definitely a certain element. Have you had
Yeah.
experience in
And I couldn't even count on all my fingers and toes how many times I've been fetishized just in my college career. Because when you go to college, I went to a private art school in San Francisco. So we had a lot of people from all over the world, from all over the country, from people that have not been in a big city, that have not met very many Asian people, but have love, Japanese culture and anime and Chinese culture and kung fu movies and kung fu and et cetera, et cetera. And so I went from not being noticed ever, not having anybody noticing me, and really paying attention to who I am as a person next to my like wider friends, right? And then I went to high school and there were more people, more Asians. So I was now one of many Asians on the campus who all fell into a category, and the Asian category. These are the Asian kids, and so it's mostly like the Asian kids would hang out with each other for prom. Only Asian guys asked me to prom. I was once again still the Asian girl that was Asian, and nobody else would take an interest in her because she was Asian. Then I got into college, and suddenly I had tons of attention from people that I never expected to before, like white people. And I'm like, oh, you guys are interested in me, like white women, white men. And they were all just so intrigued by me being Asian and like, oh my gosh, you're Asian. That's so cool. Like, let's go on a date sometime. Let's go on a date to a Chinese restaurant. Take me to a tea place, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to show you my culture." And this was like me being so excited to finally like discover my identity and be excited to be Asian for the first time because so many other people were excited that I was Asian. And then suddenly I realized that like, further down the line I'd be like, "Wait, why is it every time we do anything it has to be about me and about me being Asian and us eating Asian food?" Don't get me wrong, I will eat Asian food 24 days out of the month and not blink an eye. I love Asian food. This is just what I grew up with, right? It's what I'm used to. You can't stop me. Boba every day, dumpling the day, sushi whenever. Like I will eat
I
Asian food
love
all
that.
day long. So it took a long time for me to notice, but suddenly I realized like, "Hey, hold on a second. You only call me when you wanna go eat Asian food. We only go somewhere when you wanna eat Asian food. You only talk about me being Asian. We only talk about Asian things, anime, movies, kung fu, whatever." Like, I realized that, like, once I'm done talking about that, if I just wanna talk about anything else, I wanna talk about this, like, Wes Anderson movie that, Wes Anderson movie that just came out. You don't wanna talk about it
Mm.
anymore because that's, like, the whitest director you can
Yeah,
find,
yeah, yeah.
right? But you wanna talk all day long about, Wong Kar-wai is one of my favorite directors. He's Chinese. You'll talk about him all day long, but we can't talk about all these other directors that are just as interesting, but maybe isn't in my culture. Like you're
Yeah.
super obsessed with, you're only watching Asian movies and Asian films. That's weird. You don't want to see like everything else. It's important to know all perspectives and directions so that you can become a better artist, right? As a
Mm.
filmmaker. And
And how
and
did
suddenly I'm like, wait a second,
yeah.
you're not even Asian. Like, why are you so obsessed with this?
How did that affect you when you did realize that aspect?
I thought that that was all when I was younger, I thought that was all I could get. Like, that those are the only people that could ever be interested in me. It's just the people who are interested in me because I'm Asian, because I bring that aspect of myself. So suddenly, this identity that I was really excited to discover and finally own suddenly became like almost a weapon against myself because it was all that felt like was important to
Yeah.
people. Like, they didn't realize, like, what about this, like, crazy vibrant girl underneath here? You know what I mean? What about all of the other things I bring to the table? My exuberance, my intelligence, my charisma. No, 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 just the Asian part?
Yeah, like it's that whole thing of when like you get it. I know certain people get it in a lot in the LGBTQIA community as well, in the regards that it's when it becomes their full personality. A lot of people, when they realize their sexuality, especially if it's not heteronormative, they really embrace it, and or even realize their gender if it's not the binary. They really embrace it, and they get involved, and they dive deep into it, like you did with your Asian heritage, and they go all about it, and then it suddenly becomes like, okay, that is not a defining personality trait. Like, it's a
Yeah.
part of you, which is a very important part of you, and it's so unbelievably important that you embrace it as part of yourself, but it's not a defining personality trait. That the people should be interested
Yeah,
in you
it's just
for you,
another
not
aspect
because.
of, like,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful, multifaceted self that you are,
Yes,
you know, and
yes.
when you first discover it, you're so excited, you delve right into it, you take all the parts of it, you're so happy that people acknowledge it out of you and they see it of you, right? And then suddenly you hit, like, a tipping point, and then you're like, hold on, wait, do you even know me? Or do you
Yeah.
just know this one part of me? Do you care about the other parts of me?
And did they?
Sometimes no. Sometimes yes. I have, of course, dated people who cared about more than just the Asian part of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've definitely, like, I would say that the predominant people that I have been with have always been, like, I wanna say this is a sad percentage, but I wanna say, like, 80% of the people I've been with were with me because they were curious what it felt like to be with an Asian woman. And this
That's.
is this is actually a funny story that I tell on my stream,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes if you come into my stream, people will be yelling about Asian lips, and it sounds weird and racist maybe, but it's my fault.
Okay. All right. Some explanation might be required.
So, one of my college stories that I tell that's a funny story, was my first time I kissed a girl,
Mhm.
and, it was an experiment. I had a roommate in college who would get drunk and say outrageous things that young me didn't really peg as, "Hey, maybe that's racist. Maybe I should call you out on that." And young me was like, "Oh yeah, scientific experimentation, that makes sense." But my dorm mate, she said, "Hey, I've never kissed an Asian lips before," and I was like, "No, never." She's like, "Yeah, I'm from Ohio. There's not too many of you guys there." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense," you know. And I was like, "Yeah, well, like, I don't know if it's any different. I've only ever owned Asian lips, so I've never." And she was like, "Yeah, because, like, you know, the shape of your lips are so different. They're so much more full." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I could feel different from, like, kissing lips that are a different shape. That
Yeah.
could make sense to me, but."
It's that
And
one thing in
so and she
hindsight.
was
Yeah.
inebriated. In
Yeah.
hindsight, I was like, maybe she was interested in me, but at the time, I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is all scientific experimentation. We just need to know this for science." And so she was like, "Do you mind if I made out with you so that I could figure out if, like, if it feels different?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Why not?"
For science. For
It's not
science.
like it's not weird because it's for science, right? It's scientific
Oh,
theory.
of course, of course. Just for scientific theory. I mean, it's only right. It's only right. Did you do the law of averages as well? Make sure you do it 3 times just to be 100% sure you can get
Um, we
her.
made out that night a couple times just to make sure,
Just to be
and
sure, of
then
course.
another time, months down the line, she got inebriated again and was like, "Hey, I discovered this new kissing technique in Cosmopolitan, and I need to practice it before I go on my date." And I was like, "Okay,
Uh, oh, right,
where are you gonna
okay.
practice it?"
I,
Me.
I
The
love that.
answer
I
was
love
me.
that. Was young Amy just very naive, or like?
So naive, so naive. I was like, "No, she says she's straight, so, I mean, she's not interested in me, she's just trying it
No,
out."
of course not. Of course not. Just trying it out, just to be 100% sure. Just to be 100% sure.
Scientific
Oh, I
theory.
love
We
that.
have a hypothesis, we have
Hmm.
experiments, control groups.
It's only right control groups. I just got an imagination just been right. Okay, we've got all of these people now. We need to make sure we get different people from all different cultures and all different races and what have
Make
you.
sure,
And
are the lips
everyone's
different between them
exactly
all? We're not sure.
right. We need them all lined up in a line, and you can smooch somebody and then move on to the next person, and smooch them and move on to the next person to make sure that everyone gets an equal view. And at the end, you're filling out a 4-page review. Like what? Just
This is my essay, my PhD paper on the different lip qualities between cultures and races.
oh wow, that is wild. Yeah, I've never heard that story before, and that is yeah.
So if you ever come into my stream and people are yelling about my Asian lips, it's because of that story.
it is there's a background to it. It's not just straight up
Yeah.
racism in the
It's not
chat.
just weird. It's not chat being weird. It's my fault. It's about a
wow.
terrible story, which in
Oh,
retrospect
shit.
is hilarious and really just like,
Oh, it really is. It really is, and it's wild as well. Because like, do you know the only time it was actually the BLM protests that really started me thinking about this, about the fetishization of different people from different cultures. Because I went to one of the marches and was just like, yes, 100% sticking up for or standing beside black people as they were protesting about the way that they've been treated for eons and eons and eons. Do you know what I mean? And it was a lady, I cannot remember her name for the life of me, but a lady who got up and she started talking about the fetishization of being a black woman, and the fact that like she was like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people saying these things about me. I'm sick of people saying, oh, because I'm a black lady, I must be a whore. I must be these things because I listen to rap, because I'm do these things. And it was the specific moment that made me genuinely stop and freeze in my tracks. And she was like, I'm sick of getting with people who say I've never been with a black lady before. And I was just like, oh shit, yeah, no, that's something I've never even considered. Because I mean, maybe it's just because I've grown up around very liberal, multicultural, accepting people, but it never even occurred to me that people would see them. Oh, it's just like, oh yeah, well, I need to go down my tick list of people to get with. Okay, I got my white lady, I got my Asian lady, I got my black lady.
yeah,
Just
I have gotten that line plenty of times. I've never
no.
kissed an Asian woman before. You're the first one. I've never been with an Asian woman before. You're the first one. That's a line that I have heard more often than not.
That's and the worst thing about it is, I think the worst thing about that, from my point of view, with my life experience and having met, being a social butterfly that I am, and having met as many people I am, I can nigh on guarantee that those people mean it as a compliment.
No,
I no.
definitely not. Because I could also be like, well, you've never been with me before.
Yeah, and I completely concur. But like from my point of view, from my perspective, just like the idea of being like, oh my god, I've never been with this person, so that makes you special. And it's obviously backwards. It's also completely fucked up in the brain. But that whole dynamic of people's perspectives being like, I want this person to feel special, so I'm gonna let them know that they're the only.
That they're my
Yeah,
first,
yeah,
it's so
and
special
just
that you get to be the first one.
and that in itself is so toxic, so toxic. It's unreal. And like as we've just discussed, the fact that it is hugely racist. And
It takes away from the individuality of the person you're with,
mhm,
which is already special, right? Being with anyone is special. Having the privilege to be with someone physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever have you, that's special and that's so precious. And I think like human to human connection is all we're seeking for in life, really, right? For the
mhm,
most part, whether it be romantic or physical or emotional, all of that is special in and of itself. But when you make a statement like, you're the first whatever race
mhm,
or lesbian or gay man or bisexual woman or a trans person that I've ever been with, you change that, suddenly you're no longer a person. Um you're just a percentage.
mhm.
You're just a category. You're just another like checklist item that I get to click off tick off my list, my my bucket list of sexual exploration or whatever
Yeah.
have you. Suddenly, I'm not a person. I'm just a goal.
Yeah. And that's so dehumanizing. Like, I don't know, like it made me very aware, especially at that moment. And obviously, the more that I've researched about it, the more I've found out about it, and the more people's experiences I've heard about, um, it makes me very, very aware of the fact that I am a white man. I am a white cisgendered man. I'm like, I am. I have
What does
been
that feel
so.
like?
How does that feel like? Very weird. Like I feel like the villain in every story because at the end of the day, it's people, it's white cisgendered men that have fucked the vast majority of the world. Like at the end of the day, like there's a lot to it, and there is an inherent. I feel like there is for those people that are self aware and aware of their own privilege that are white cisgendered men, there is a perpetual guilt that we feel for things that we haven't done because it's people like us that have done them, and there's so many things that we are not aware of, like for example the inherent racism behind words like "you're the first insert race here that I've been with," that we are just completely oblivious to because we have no context of how it could be anything other than our perspective. It's really the past few years, especially like being on Twitch, the past few years, and the more cultures and the more diversity and stuff that I have become exposed to, the more conscious I am about how little I know about so much. I
So
can
much to
do.
unlearn.
Hmm.
Even for me as like a woman of color, as someone in the LGBTQIA plus community, right? I There's still so much to learn and so much to unlearn from regular heteronormative society, right? There's like so much to see and so much to understand and so much that we've been pre-programmed to understand because of the way our culture is and how we grew up and how the general society has come to kind of create this like this what is it this reality that we live in, right? And all
Hmm.
the understanding and history and even just the way things are phrased and the emphasis of like of where history's eyes are versus where the experience lies for the people that are like us, right?
Yeah. And that's that. I think that's certainly at the moment, where at the time of this recording, um, something that's really terrifying about a lot of politics all over the world is how much isn't being talked about, or how much stuff is suddenly being actively avoided or actively covered up. I like the banning books in schools, giving specific tutelages about who is evil and who isn't evil, and all of the things that I would have thought that we would have grown out of 100 years ago as a species, you know. But it's wild to see it going back on itself. And I don't like to talk too much about politics, but it is scary to.
Super scary. I moved from California to Florida in the last in almost a year, right? And it's such a huge dynamic change from my circles. Moving from California to Florida has been a huge change and shift. I mean, obviously I have my like pretty liberal bubble that I'm around because obviously my girlfriend is gay and I'm
Mhm.
gay. And we hang out with gay and open people who are accepting of us, right? Um, but it's wild to like meet like family members or just random people on the street and see how huge that dynamics shift is. Like from California, being openly gay on the streets isn't a fear for me. You know,
Yeah.
living in Los Angeles, being gay is normal. Most people are queer over there. Like it's not, you won't not see somebody queer on the streets being openly queer, right? Whereas like in Florida, some people are scared. Like in some places, we can't hold hands because it could be dangerous for us in some in especially they're trying to pass laws where the don't say gay law, for
Hmm.
example, where you literally can't even talk about it in schools can't teach children, you can't let them know about gay things, because that's predatory on them, right? Because it's sexualizing your children. And I'm like, I have seen so like for example, I've seen Gossip Girl or Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the new one, where they're sexualizing 16-year-olds. They're having sex in schools. They're
Mhm.
having romances. What's the difference if it's a gay couple versus a straight couple? How is that not sexualizing, are you?
Well, to be honest with you,
Teaching them about their sexuality
yeah,
and empowering them with that, you
but
know?
it's actually worse than that because it actually boils down to much much younger ages. Like, how many times has a 3-year-old come out of school holding hands with somebody of the opposite gender, and some person turns around and goes, "Oh, is that your girlfriend?" You're immediately putting these two children in relationship dynamics, in a heteronormative relationship dynamic. If you see two little boys, little 3-year-old boys holding hands, "Oh, is that your best friend?" See little
Mhm.
two little girls, "Is that your best friend?" Two opposite gender. I'm talking the binary here, but specifically like opposite genders. "Oh, is that your girlfriend?" That is just as sexualizing
Immediately.
as turning around and saying, "Oh, by the way, young Timmy has two fathers." It's wild to see that, but of course, as we all know, it's very much a pick and choose, isn't it? Like, this
Yes.
bit suits me, this bit doesn't suit me. We'll pick the bits that we wanna see, and we're not happy. We'll just ignore the other bits that we're not comfortable with. It's
Yeah,
wild.
and then it sexualizes, like, hand holding, if you think
Hmm.
about it. If you're
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about, like, suddenly this person you're holding hands with, you're attached to, you're their partner. You're like, "Wait, I'm just holding hands. Suddenly we're pregnant, married, and have a house? Like, how did this happen?"
yeah, yeah.
You know?
All I did
Like,
was hold a
and
hand
that's
when
where
I was 3 years old. Good lord.
don't hold hands in the dark, that would be entirely too scandalous.
Yeah, and it is. It's wild the way that happens. But you mentioned just now about your partner, who, as I understand it, based on all of your social medias, is a glorious individual. So I'm very happy that you're with
Glorious
her.
individual, love
Yeah,
her.
exactly. But you weren't always, obviously weren't always with them, and you have had previous relationships I am aware of.
Yes. I was married.
Hmm.
I got divorced. God, has it almost been 2 years?
And
2
you were
years
married
maybe?
to a cis man, right?
Yes, I was
Yes.
married to a cis man. I was with him for 12 years, big, huge portion of my life. And we got divorced about 2 years ago, and I've been with my current partner about over a year now. And, that's a big change.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
I remember simply going up to my mom. I've never really officially come out to my mom. My mom always thought I was kind of fruity 'cause, all my friends were girls, and
Hmm.
I never really brought home any guys as like, "This is my boyfriend." I brought home, like, 1, and he was very effeminate. And
I
my mom was
can
like,
vibe with
"Are you dating a
that.
gay man? Are you dating a gay man? Did you bring a gay man home?" And I'm like, "No, he's just bisexual and very effeminate. He really likes hair care products." Um, but I didn't tell her that at the
No.
time. I was not gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, no, no, my boyfriend's bisexual. He likes anything."
Yeah. That's great.
Um, and and so I and so my mom always kind of thought I was gay. She was like, "Are you lesbian?" Like, every so often, I'd be like, "This is a trap. I'm not gonna tell you that." And then later down the line, when I started dating my current partner, I went into her room and I was like, "Hey, mom, my girlfriend's gonna visit me next week." Then I just left.
You didn't even
And
wait for a response,
and
just
that's how I came out to my mom, I guess, officially.
because I was about to say, because your mother lives with you.
Yes, she does. She's been living with me for, oh, 3 years now.
Okay, so,
'Cause
like
my father my dad, my stepdad, who's a fantastic man, passed away 3
mhm,
years ago, tragically, and then my grandpa passed away right after him, all my paternal figures in my life.
mhm.
And then my mom was alone, and my mom is not a person that can be alone. And so she moved in with me, and I've been living with her since 3 years now.
And how has that been? I mean, we were gonna talk about the marriage and going from heteronormative to homonormative scenarios and
Homonormative. I love that.
I prefer homonormative. I would much rather the world was a little more homonormative, but but like let's go straight on to how is it living with your mother and having a sex life?
It's a mood killer, for sure. You know,
understatement
mood
of
killer.
the century. I love
My
that.
mom is not. When I look at my mom, I don't want to feel sexy at
That's
all.
fair.
I feel
That
the
is
opposite. There's
probably
plenty
a
of, generational trauma packed in there. And now I went from living 500 miles away from her, which is the minimum distance I ask of my relatives. And now I'm living 5 feet away from her, which is obviously negative minimum
that
distance
is
from
very
where
much
I
so.
want all my relatives to be. I spent a lot of time working and getting to a place where I could be 500 plus miles away from my family, and then they just came right in there.
It's like, by the way,
um,
this is the
Here we
scenario.
are, and what am I gonna do? Leave my mom on the street? No.
Nah.
And so it was definitely a mood killer. It was a big adjustment. I had to learn that your life is separate from mine,
Mhm.
and I had to just put it out of my head, ignore it, because if I didn't, I would never do anything. I would always be dead down there.
Mhm. That is fair. And like, is that something, especially with you like having a girlfriend and the way that you came out to your mother and just being like, my girlfriend's coming round. Goodbye.
It's the same way she kind of approached me with like, this is what happens when you have your period. So it was kind of like, like in retrospect, I realized that the generational trauma she enacted on me, I once did a Uno no you reverse. And in retrospect, I was like, oh man, I probably could have been better about that. But also, I've never learned tact because you never taught me tact, mom. So
I'm surprised that you didn't just, hand her a book on how to be a lesbian and just
yeah,
like,
this is how
walk
to be
away.
gay. Enjoy.
Enjoy
I've always
this.
expected that my mom I've always expected that my mom is kind of on the spectrum,
Mhm.
honestly, of being gay, and she's just never been in a place where she could experience that or anything like that. But she has, this is a funny anecdote about my mom. She has only ever been with Virgo men,
She's only ever
which
been
is
with
interesting.
Virgo men.
Virgo men, and I'm not like astrology hoodoo voodoo, but my mom has only been with very particular, very tetchy men who all happen to be born within days of each other.
That is that okay, that's pretty
So
unique.
bizarre to me. But just like the way she reacts to like lady body parts and like sex mentioning feels very like nipples. Um Feels like she never got to explore or understand or know anything about like sex and the vast world around it, right? Of course, naturally, because she grew up in China.
But
But
that's
yeah,
so
the
upsetting
way
because there is a rich
there's nothing.
but there is like if you date back, there's so much rich heritage across nearly every culture that
Yeah,
is to
of
do with
sex.
sex, and it's so
Absolutely.
important, and it's amazing to see, especially in this day and age, so many people getting more involved with the sexual dynamics of their cultures and their history and stuff like that. You see all these amazing artworks and fantastic erotic books, the like tuition books. I mean, obviously people know about like the Perfumed Garden and they know about the Kama Sutra and stuff like that, but there's so much of it. There's so much rich history,
That got,
and
like, destroyed
yeah.
during wars, during, like, puritanical eras, during, like, the British takeover of China, the communist era, like,
hmm
all of that killed it, which I
Britain
guess
is
valid, like, war in
Britain's
Britain.
like, gee, like the more,
Wah.
especially as I'm becoming more and more of a like say more and more of a sex educator and learning more and more about this stuff, the more I'm realizing how damning Victorian Britain the
Ugh.
was on the world, on like the rich sexual history of the world. Like we literally came in and went, "What's that? You enjoy coital engagement? No, 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 you can't do that. No." Get me a little pipe out. No, 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 can't do that. No, not having any of that shit. No, none of
Put
that.
those genitals away.
No, put your nasty little genitals away. What's that? What's that? While you're at it, don't worry.
Like let's not talk about the rich brothel history in Britain as well, and how
Mm-hmm.
quite often the royals frequented these establishments.
Oh
So
God,
clearly
yeah.
they enjoyed it, they wanted it,
They
but
couldn't just be
they
seen
had to
to enjoy
hide
it.
it into like dirty
Yeah.
alleyways.
It's very much like the way that the sex work industry is treated in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's just like nearly everyone enjoys it in some way, shape, or form, and yet
In some way.
everybody is
Yeah.
willing to just happily brush it under the carpet and be like, no, down with that sort of thing. I don't like that at
We're
all.
just gonna pretend this is like a secret shame, even though we've been doing it literally through all of human history.
Even though it's literally integral to the procreation of the species, we're just gonna fucking ignore that. So it's naughty and dirty, and can't have that. Yeah, it's wild. It's really
I was built
really
with
wild.
pleasure receptors. How come they're illegal? I don't understand.
But then I think some of that comes down to, I mean, obviously I can talk about like the puritanical Christian elements of it and what have you, but a lot of it comes down to what you were saying earlier of this feels good, it must be wrong.
Must be bad.
It must be bad because I mean, and then you're going back to medieval times when it was the church trying to control everything and keep everyone chastised and everything, and just being like, no, it feels good, it must be bad. That's not okay. But I don't know why they're all so
Good things
Victorian
are
from
all
Britain.
bad.
Good things. You enjoy something, it's bad. Fuck you.
Are you feeling joy? Wrong.
Exactly. But what was it like? So, especially going back to the previous conversation around like you being married and then that relationship coming to a close, and then you getting with your current partner who is a lady, and like what was that like in terms of like what you went through your mind, but also how people reacted to that? Because I know you said before you came from quite a conservative background, quite conservative area. Like, what was that like?
Um, I feel like I was really lucky to meet the people that I did in college who kind of taught me
Hmm.
about there's like a whole wide world of sex out there. There's a lot of things that you can experience and do, and it's safe and it's consensual and it's okay to feel this way, and you don't have to feel shame. And that helped a lot. It helped me heal a lot of like the things that made me feel shame and guilt in my pleasure, right? It started my journey on realizing that like touching yourself doesn't require punishment. It doesn't require something bad happening either. Bad things aren't tied to what you did to feel nice for yourself, which also ties into not even just like touching myself, but like also just like treating myself like, oh, I bought myself an extra slice of cake today. Oh, I got into a car crash. That's why. Like that kind of weird like superstition tie-in, because good things are bad. And if you do a good thing, then you're gonna have to suffer a bad thing, which is the opposite of karma, I feel like, where, like,
Yeah, that
karma
is.
means you do a good thing, you get a good thing, but I did a good thing, but now I get a bad thing because it was a good thing for myself. It wasn't, like, a good thing that was, like, outward, like, that was charitable or
Heaven
nice or
forfend you do
something like
something
that.
that makes you feel good. Good lord, no, you got
If
it.
I feel good, that's bad, but if I make people feel good, that's okay.
But that's even
Which
worse
doesn't
because
make any sense.
if you think about it from thinking,
Oh, yeah,
then
now I'm a people pleaser. Now I'm, like, a chronic people pleaser
no,
because
but
I can make other people feel good,
even if
and
you
good things
take
can
it
come of
from
it.
like from exactly what you were saying, it's like I'm not allowed to feel good, but if I make other people feel good, that's good. But if they're also not allowed to feel good, then how is it meant to
It
what?
is just like, but if they feel good, that's their own shame that they gotta deal
That's
with.
all
If
right.
they feel good from something I
That's
do for
not my
them, then that's
problem.
you'll deal with that one. But it's okay for me to help you feel good because that's a good thing to do. But if I feel good, that's
All right, yeah,
bad.
okay, that's all right. That's okay. I
Catch
have to.
22.
You
Yeah,
can deal with your own shame, but that's I've made you feel good, and that's what matters. All right, because
yeah,
now I
yeah.
can feel good about making you feel good. But the moment I feel
Without
good,
any shame or guilt,
oh, good
because
lord,
it's a good deed.
this is the worst. This is the
Yeah,
worst.
and so I was really lucky to like have already gone into the world and experienced a vast like cacophony of different lifestyles. I met polyamorous couples. I met, I met the whole BDSM community in San Francisco. I experienced the whole gamut of that beautiful, colorful, wild world. I did all sorts of things. I was with various sorts of people in a variety of manners, and I was like, "Oh, this is okay. It's okay. This is all okay." People are happy, they're fulfilled, they're healing themselves, they're healing that inner child that was so broken by all the shame and guilt that they grew up with, that they were raised to feel like it was normal and not okay to do any of these absolutely normal and, like, actually wonderful things, you know? And so that helped me, and so when I first met my ex-husband, I was in this, like, beautiful space of, like, I love everybody, and I love every gender, and I love every experience, and I'm so excited to experience more, and I met this, cishet man who grew up in a Catholic family, a Catholic Mexican family, and that was, like, a huge clash, number 1, because I was like, "Freedom, love, everybody," you know, and he was very much like, "I love that. That's so cool about you. That's so refreshing about you," et cetera, et cetera, and then, like, somewhere along the way in the 12 years, shame happened because his culture versus my culture versus my beautiful experience in college learning and growing and healing, somewhere along the way, shame happened. And shame from his desires and not wanting to express what he wanted, shame from my desires, not getting what I wanted, also feeling shame from him, being shamed by him. And then me, because of the shame I received, lashing out with similar shame, like, how dare you want these things when you are shaming me for other things, et cetera, et cetera. And and then like and then here we go looping back to the fetishizing the race thing. My ex was very into Chinese culture specifically. He did kung fu, he did tea ceremony, he spoke Chinese fluently. And for me, in all like written down on paper, that was all fantastic because he fed into that desire for me to feel more accepted into my own culture, right? You love my culture, this culture that I've been so disassociated with for so long that I'm desperately trying to find a way back in. And you encourage that for me. So it felt all natural. It felt good. It felt very like, thank you for encouraging this culture of me, you know,
Mm.
because this is what I wanted. Meanwhile, never questioning, hey, how come we don't explore your culture? How come we don't celebrate your culture? When your family is so like vibrantly Mexican, you know,
Mm.
vibrantly Mexican, celebrating their even their indigenous culture points, like Mayan culture and etc. They would do like sweat lodges, all those things, very spiritual South American culture.
Yeah.
And going to their family's house, I could experience this, I could see it. But then coming back to my house, suddenly we're in like this Chinese house. But I didn't make the house Chinese. My husband did at the time, right? My ex-husband
Yeah.
did.
Okay, that's a different
And
dynamic.
in my head, it just like it was hard to separate what I wanted versus what actually came from him because I was so like desperate to feel connected to my Asian culture, feeling like I was not Asian enough, I was not Chinese enough because I'm American born and there's a stigma there from like people who are actually Chinese born versus people who are American born Chinese having a separate culture clash there too, right? And so I don't think it was really until the BLM movement in 2020 that it suddenly woke something up in me where I was like, "Wait a second. Hold on a second. I've shunned so many people who have fetishized me for being Chinese. I've shunned so many people who have only focused on the part of me that is Chinese and not the other parts. Not to say that my ex-husband only did this. He celebrated all the parts of me. He always encouraged me to be creative. He always encouraged me to learn and grow. If I picked up a new hobby, he was there for me to like take me places. Like I picked up pole dancing. I got really obsessed with it, started competing, doing shows. He was there every show, every competition, running down the block to get there in time. He was driving me to practices when I was too tired to drive some days or, like, just lazy, just didn't want to. I'm like, "No, we're gonna go. This is so good for you. You're the happiest you've been in a long time," you know, et cetera, et cetera. He encouraged those parts, but at the end of the day, it all boiled down to the fact that his attraction to me was only because I was Chinese. Like, we became best friends,
Yeah.
but we couldn't be connected in that way.
Yeah. No, I get that. And that's I think that realization is extremely hard because it's a conversation I've had in my streams with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, which is, do you love me or do you love the idea of me? And sometimes it's hard to know where that line is. And it's very rarely a straight line. There's usually a big blur in the middle somewhere, but it
Big
is
blur.
that dynamic of, do you love me or do you love the idea of me?
And it was like we had become best friends and so supportive of each other's endeavors, but we lost a connection somewhere along the way where the only time we could come together in a way like intimately was, wait a second, you're only attracted because I look the way I do.
Yeah.
Like despite all these things that we've come together and we can support each other in, this was not the deal. Like I didn't want you to want me for this face. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's all aesthetics, right? Like you get attracted to a person because of how they look
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But like it could be any girl.
Yeah. You want it
It could
to.
be any woman that looked similar to me. And it
Yeah.
was.
And
It was many women along the way that looked similar to me.
yeah.
That was the problem.
It is the problem, because it's like, it's that whole dynamic of you want somebody to be attracted to you because you're a beautiful woman, not because you're an Asian woman.
Yes.
Yeah, and I get that. I really do get that. Because there's a certain amount of fetishization that comes from being a man, obviously nowhere near in comparison, but from being a very effeminate man in makeup.
Oh.
And I definitely felt it as I've traveled to other countries and what have you, and seen people stare at me, usually men stare at me, usually in countries where homosexuality is illegal. And it's just that whole, no, hello, yeah, blonde, lean, white man. Okay, here we go. And
With an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
This unlocked part of me that I can finally access because the way you look gives me permission to.
Yes. Oh God,
Which
yes.
obviously it doesn't.
No.
But
Consent in all things, friends. Consent in all things.
always.
Because it's the most important thing. In all things, it is the most important thing. And that is quite the somber note to end on. But I think it's an important note to end on, in the regards that it's really important to see beyond aesthetics. It's very important to see beyond the parts of, or the things that somebody does, or the parts of a person's history or heritage or what have you that appeals to you, and see them as a person. And is it their in this dynamic, as we've been talking here, is it their culture, is it their heritage, is it their aesthetics in reference to those culture and heritage that someone is attracted to, or is it the culture itself that you're attracted to? You know, is it the person or is it the culture?
Yeah. And like after experiencing that and knowing that I was in that kind of relationship for such a long time, like being with my partner now, it's so vastly different. You know, my culture is cool. It's very interesting for her to experience and explore and like be exposed to for the first time, you know, like so in such a way. But then turn around, like that doesn't matter. Like I could be anybody,
You know,
you
I was
know?
just about to ask. How your current relationship has
She
been
doesn't
in
care that
comparison.
I'm Asian, you know? That could matter less. It's cool. It's a cool aspect of me,
Yeah.
but the parts of me that I feel loved are so like a feeling of unconditional love where even though I could be Hispanic, I could be a black woman, I could be anybody, you know?
Yeah.
But because I'm me, the person I am, that's why she's here, you know?
Yeah.
And that's pretty
That's
cool.
pretty cool. It's fucking beautiful, is what it is, because it's one of those rare things, and I always question it in all of my previous relationships as well. Is like, I'm a very aesthetically driven person. Like I've fall in love with a person, but the thing that draws me to that person is aesthetics. Like I'm very aware of this, that this is an aspect of me, and the kind of person I am. But and it does make me question these things. It does make me question these things, and to see that you found somebody that has taken all of the aspects that make you you, and that's the bit that they fall in love with. The rich cultural heritage and everything else is just a bonus. That's like the nice little the icing on top of your very tasty. Well, I was about to say very tasty cake, and that sounds very inappropriate. But but
I mean, in a euphemism.
I was going for a more innocent vibe. I swear.
Something gay, something women with cake, something.
Do you know what? I can't do it. Nothing I ever say is ever going to be innocent. It never works that way.
Not. Take that out of context.
Somebody's definitely going to clip
context.
That.
Still the same.
Oh, did you hear? Valen Vain hits on his guests. Fucking outrageous. Ah, Jesus Christ, amazing. Well, that was an amazing point to finish on. No one's ever going to take that out of context, ever. Good Lord.
You could say it really took the cake.
Oh, good Lord. Really? You're bringing puns and dad jokes to me?
It was right there. It was so...
outrageous is what it is. Outrageous. Juicy. And it spirals out of control once again.
Here we go. We've lost it. The wheels, hands off.
Oh my lordy. Right. Okay. Let's bring this buzz back on track, shall we? I don't know why it's on track, but it apparently is. AmiSometimes, you beautiful individual. Thank you so much for coming and joining me on the podcast. I know we've overran slightly, but it's been a wonderful speaking to you, and I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you?
You can find me as AmiSometimes pretty much everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch. Is there anything else? It's probably AmiSometimes if there is.
It's probably AmiSometimes anyway. And for those people that are listening and watching on the YouTubes or listening on whatever podcast you are, I will, of course, put Amy's links once again down below in all of the description and what have you. Thank you very much for being here, Amy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Valen.
I have so many more questions in regards to your life now that you've opened up about certain aspects of it. So I'm sure we'll drag you back on in the future and just be like, right, okay, tell me about the fetish scene in San Francisco. How interesting.
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories. Oh my gosh. Those stories are juicy and
are they as juicy as cake?
Behind a paywall. No, I'm kidding. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me here. You'll find I'm just an open book. I probably shared too much about myself, honestly, on the internet.
I have definitely found out about a lot more about you than I was expecting, and now I won't question it too much when I come into your stream and everyone's shouting Asian lips. You know, I think that was a story I never knew I wanted.
The only time that it's appropriate to utilize those words in the same sentence in a chat with an Asian woman
who has context and has explained that context to the chat. All right, that is amazing, absolutely amazing. All right,